Okay, welcome back to Daily Driven Alpha, and thanks for tuning back into the channel. And for those of you watching for the first time, thanks for your interest and your support. We've got a bunch of videos that go way back on this project car if you're interested in the history and following the journey. Today we're just going to take you through where we are with the engine rebuild. So this little 1600 motor, we drove it in one of our other Alphas for a while just to see how it went. Had a little bit of piston slap, and so what we decided to do was pull the entire engine apart, and we've done that. We re-honed the sleeves. They were relatively okay. We took the crank and the head to a local machine shop. Crank was in spec, they just linished it, which meant that we could use standard bearings again, which was great. They pressure tested, washed, and put 4 new inlet valves into the head, did all the valve clearances, spring checks, came back beautifully done, milled, so it's nice and square, and we're very happy with their work. So that's all been bolted together, torqued down. The head gets torqued down cold at 50 foot-pound for the bolts. There's a sequence in which you do it. You start in the center, then you move forward, then you move back, and then you diagonally do the last bolts. There's a pattern, you can find that online. And for your charts on torque specs, we use Centerline out of the US. So if you just look them up online, you'll find their charts. A couple of things to remember: there's a bolt under here and under here that go from the block underneath up into the head. Don't forget those. So that's all been put in. We've checked the cams. There's new timing chains that have been put in, top and bottom. And then the cam markings that sit and align with the markings on the bearing caps at the front were slightly off. So what we did was we cranked it over by hand using a dial gauge to find top dead center, not using the pulley mark here that says top dead center. That's great for ignition timing, but it's not as accurate as checking actual top dead center from the piston. And then what we had to do was take one of the bolts out of the sprockets, loosen off a nut on the intake cam, and manually adjust that to where we came closer to the timing mark, and then reset that. So that was with the timing chain still in place. You don't have to split the timing chain apart. You can do that once it's in. So then we went along and checked and made sure that all our valves and everything were operating. One thing I will just say is be careful when you do that. If you start to turn the motor over, you may have some of your valves in a fully open position, and as the pistons rise, they will make contact. So fine if you're doing it by hand, you'll soon come across that and you shouldn't do any damage, but just be aware of that when you're doing it. Other things that we've done, obviously new water pump gone in. We've reused the old fan. Bosch distributor, we've got some new points and a condenser coming for that. Fuel pump, installed that, put some fuel into it, cranked it by hand, checked that it's pumping, which it is. Carburetors have been put in with all new gaskets, and they've been serviced as well, so we're happy with those. New engine mounts that have been put in, and don't forget this stay piece here that's bushed at the bottom. Make sure that that bushing's in good condition. This sits against your plenum and your intake manifold, bolts on, and supports the entire structure from vibration and load. That's quite important because these carburetors are held on by these hard rubber interface mounts, and over time they can crack with the load if you're not careful, and then once that happens you have a hell of a time tuning the car because you've got air leaks. Right, one of the things that happened and was a little bit of a rookie error, the rear seal. So you'll notice that this rear seal that we bought has got a deformation in it. It's got some damage in it, and unfortunately that was through a mistake of putting that in before putting in the backing plate. And this backing plate protects this seal from the two half moon pieces and the gap that sits behind here that your flywheel bolts to. So this needs to go in first, and then you put your seal in. So what happened was we pushed this in before we put that in, and then it started to deform in one of the gaps, and once that happens there's no coming back. So we've had to pull this out, and we damaged it pulling it out, but we've ordered a new one. Small mistake, but just delays time and cost that you don't need. So just be mindful of that. Also, don't forget your plate for your starter motor. Put that on before you put your flywheel on, and that is used obviously for your bell housing and your interface with your starter motor. Helps position that. Right, let's talk a little bit about oil priming. Oh, before I do that, we just cleaned up the cast iron headers and painted them with a nice high temperature ceramic paint. Makes them look a little bit nicer, also protects them. Those cast iron headers get quite rusty, and with a high temperature paint that's got ceramic in it, helps keep some of the heat out of the engine bay and moves the gases out quickly. So obviously new gaskets and the like through there. We've put on a high efficiency oil filter because as we run this through the first cycle, there's going to be some material that comes out as the engine beds in, and we want to get that taken out of the oil as much as possible. Now you'll notice further over we've got an Australian manufacturer called Penrite Oils, and we don't promote the products here, but they are very good. And that is a 15W40 running in oil. So you do need to do that for the first period of the motor. Run that in. It helps protect the bearings and the journals and the like, and it also helps the pistons and the piston rings bed in. Run that for a couple of 100 miles, and then we'll drop that out, put new filters on, and run some of the normal oil through it. Now, I just wanted to talk about priming the motor for that first startup. And we've looked around online and spoken to some of the other engine builder friends of ours, and there's a range of different ways that people go about getting oil through the galleries first. Now, some of the simple stuff that you can do is get the oil through the top end of your cam, pour it into those recesses where the cams are, soaks into where the buckets are, gets everything nice and coated. Obviously, once it's overfilled, it drains back down. But do that for a start. Make sure you liberally coat everything. Having said that, obviously when you put the motor together, make sure that you're using assembly lube on all the parts that are going to rotate for the first time, which we have done. And then the other aspect is when we had the motor inverted and we had the sump off, we made sure that the oil pump itself had been filled with oil. We rotated that, made sure that it was sucking up some of the oil, just turning it by hand, listening to it, feeling it, pouring a lot of oil into it. Not exactly scientific, but you get a sense of whether or not you feel that the oil pump is still serviceable. Then what we've done is filled it up with oil, bearing in mind that the rear end still isn't sealed, so if you don't tip this motor up, because all your oil will pour out the back end of the crankshaft area. And then what we've done is we've taken a breaker bar and a socket here on the pulley, and we've hand cranked, before we put the fan on, hand cranked this a number of times to get a sense of whether we feel that the oil pump is actually primed and taking up oil. Now, there's people who have said that one of the ways you can do it is to take the oil cap off, get a high compression air hose, stick it in there with some rags, pressurize the crankcase. That may work, I don't know, but I don't particularly like the idea of it. It sounds a little bit wild for me. And so what we did was we took the oil temperature sender off here and unscrewed that, because that's part of the journals here. Cranked this over as fast as we could by hand until we saw some oil come out of this port here, and that told us that the pump's picking up oil, it's pushing it through, and it's feeding it through into the journals. So that's good enough for us. So what we've done is put that back in. Don't forget there's a little copper washer that goes on the back of that as you screw that in. And so that's sitting ready to be put into the car and to be test fired, obviously once we finish doing that. So that's a bit of an update there. What I'll do is I'll also just give you a quick update on the rest of the vehicle, show you some of the other bits and pieces we've been working on, and then we'll get another post up once we've got something a bit more productive to show you. So let's just break from this. I'm just going to lower it down onto the blocks, and then we'll come back and we'll look at the rest of the car. Okay, just quickly, you can just see that we've got some of the rest of the components that we've been working on, getting things ready, bell housing, cleaned that up. Just a reminder, and I'm just reminding myself here, we've got the reverse switch here, that actually needs another screw in it, but test your reverse switch before you put your bell housing together. You don't want to be finding out that it's not working once it's in the car. That is extremely painful. We've also cleaned up the flywheel cover and put in the boot. There's a rubber boot that goes in, and we've liberally coated that with some rubber grease. Be mindful when you put that in, these apertures are quite tight, and these components can sometimes split the rubber, so heat this up with a heat gun gently and give yourself the best shot of slipping this through without splitting the rubber. Airbox is done, and the elephant trunk plenum and the intake is sitting there ready to go on with some gaskets. Right, let me take you across to the car and we'll talk about what we've done there so far. Right, car's looks the same, and this is one of those things, you do a heap of work and often you feel as though you haven't moved forward that much, but we have. So you can see that the scuttle panel has got some seals, etc. On it, but what we've done is put the wiper mechanism and a new motor in it. So we'll play around with that and obviously get that seated right. For those of you who haven't seen before, headliner's in. We just started putting in some of the grab handles at the back, and what we've been doing with these is taken the old chrome that's been peeling off it and wire wheeled them and then polished them, so you've got polished aluminium. So that's one way to salvage these without having to try and re-chrome them somehow, because the chrome plating over the years just flakes off and looks awful. You can see the rear screens in, which is great. So the back end of the car is starting to get set up. We've positioned the rear bumper. Once again, just a reminder to everyone, tape off all the areas and tape your sharp edges before you start moving any of these steel components around. The last thing you want to be doing is scratching your paintwork once you've spent all that time. and boot lid's gone in. Now, just I've done a separate video on this, but I'm just going to quickly pop that and just talk you through a couple of things that we've done here. We've put the old badges back on, just giving them a light clean up, but we thought it might be nice just to have something original on the car with a bit of patina. Right, boot lid's in, or if you're from the States, trunk. And for a bit of fun, we've just put the original paint code sticker on. Not many people do that, but we thought it'd just be a bit of a nod to the original car. The seal, on a lot of the earlier cars, these seals are actually glued into this channel here. What we've done is we've taken one of the low profile, and I'll say that again, it's a lower profile seal, and we've put that in. That works because we found that those glued seals that sit up in the trunk don't seal as well, and you can get water ingress up here, and you also get some of the exhaust gases migrating into the boot. So we've put that on. Just a little obvious tip, start here in the middle, work your way around, and then when you come to this area, trim just a fraction past where you want to be and force it back in so you get a nice tight finish here. Otherwise what will happen is you'll cut it, you'll push it down, and you'll end up with a gap. So that's in. One of the things that we have done is there's some buffers that go on the top of the hinges here, and I'm not sure if we're going to get to see it in this light. There you can see it. Don't forget to put those little rubber stops on as you go up, because what they do is they help protect the bodywork as the impact comes in. And the torsion bars that go in, I've done a separate video on those because there seems to be some information out there that isn't correct, and people are putting the springs in incorrectly down further round under here. It's not right, so this is the right way to do it. So there we go. We've got boot in, rear bumper positioned, rear glass in, and the next step for us is work our way into the interior and then get that motor and stick it in that car. So look, thank you very much for tuning in. I hope your projects are going well. Love to hear your progress. Happy to receive comments and advice. We're always learning something, and we've had some great comments recently with some really good points raised. So thank you for those constructive comments. So please keep your comments respectful. Not that we do get disrespectful ones, but I'm just reminding everybody, and hope your projects are going well. Thanks for tuning in. Like, subscribe, share this with other like-minded Alpha owners, and we look forward to catching you on the next upload. Thanks for watching.